Have you ever noticed that when you give a child a hammer, suddenly everything needs hammering? And if you give a child an entire toolkit and some training, maybe he might have a chance of actually learning how to use a hammer properly. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to the wide variety of templates for standard work that come within your Systems to Win suite of templates that are appropriate for standardizing work for different types of processes and when to use each. Of all the lean tools, the standard work suite of tools are perhaps the most important because this is where theory meets practice.
It's just too common for a continuous improvement project to start with high energy and come up with fantastic ideas for how to make a process better, only to fumble the ball on the 1-yard line
because the star-studded continuous improvement team had moved on and focused their attention somewhere else without ever completing the final step needed to lock in the gains of their last project. That's what standard work does. It allows you to ratchet your gains and avoid backsliding into old habits. Now we're going to spend most of our time in this video on the lean tools for standard work. But before we do, let's take a look at a value stream map, because that's one of the most common sources of confusion for a lot of people. When should I use a flow chart, like this one, or when should I use a value stream map? And we find that once you understand the definition of a continuous flow process box, it will become obvious to you. The definition of a continuous flow process box is the thing being processed doesn't stop flowing. The key thing to understand is that there could be dozens or hundreds of sub-processes. As long as that thing doesn't stop flowing, that appears as one process box on the value stream map. Now you can click this button to unhide all kinds of answers to common questions, but those questions are still at the value stream map level of detail. In other words, if you want to understand what are those 200 steps that happen within machining, then you would use these link icons to drill down to related documents. And the documents that you drill down to are usually the lean tools to improve the process and to train your workers on how to do things the standard way. So it might be that you're drilling down to a swim lane functional flow chart that has perhaps 200 steps for machining. And notice while we're here that unlike Visio, this does the math, not just drawing the picture. Or you might drill down to a simple flow chart, such as a decision tree that doesn't need any math. Or you might drill down to a stick figure illustration, which might be copied to either an A3 report or maybe to a PowerPoint or to a Word document. It's just a great tool for illustrating the flow of people and transportation modes, as well as the flow of information through a workplace. This is a particularly powerful tool for a medical or office environment where you want to use pictures to access the intuitive, creative problem-solving side of the brain rather than just words. And once you've watched our free training videos on how to use Excel as a drawing tool, you'll realize that you don't need to buy Visio for every one of your employees. They just need training. And now your people have been trained for how to draw a layout diagram. And we've all encountered situations where sometimes a few words are worth 1,000 pictures. And that's why it's really important to understand that usually, not always, but often, each one of these operation circles on the layout diagram correlates on a one-to-one basis with a work element in the standard work combination sheet. Now, probably the single most important thing that you're going to learn about standard work is the definition of a work element. When you're training your people how to do time observation, by far the most important thing you're going to teach them is how to identify breakpoints in the work where the work could be handed off from one worker to another. That's the definition of a work element. A logical chunk of work that begins and ends with a breakpoint that can be handed off between workers. So back on our layout diagram, let's notice that these 9 work elements are currently divvied up between 3 operators. So at another time, at another level of customer demand, maybe Christmas time, we might divvy up those same 9 work elements between 4 operators. Now, wouldn't it be a whole lot easier to reallocate that work between 4 operators if you had one overarching document that showed the interrelationships between all the work elements, and then all of your other standard work documentation had separate documents per work element rather than per operator? Now, if you've got a simple process, then you can really use any one of these types of templates for detailed work instructions. But if there's any chance that someday in the future you might divvy up the work between multiple operators, then it's almost always your best choice to choose the standard work combination sheet to serve as the overarching document to show the interrelationship between the work elements for the entire process. This is where you can do your operator load balancing to reallocate work between workers. This is a terrific tool for doing value-add analysis. With the click of a button, it automatically creates a chart sheet that draws the work, walk, wait, and machine time in relationship to your green cycle time, which had better be less than your red tack time, or you're not going to meet your schedule. Notice how much more valuable information you have here, by the way, compared to a traditional Yamazumi stacked bar chart that provides only a fraction of the information you need to make intelligent decisions. And this is an excellent tool for dividing internal versus external setup time for SMED quick changeover setup reduction. Now, if this were a simple process, you could put all of your detailed work instructions right here on this one worksheet, perhaps using sequence numbers to provide more details for some work elements, and perhaps providing pictures or illustrations. And you can define your own palette of industry-specific shapes for things like personal protective equipment, hazardous materials, TWI symbols, or any user-defined purpose. But if any work element has a substantial level of detail, then rather than cluttering up this overarching document, it's usually a better idea to link to some other type of document, which might be a flowchart or a PowerPoint, or in this case a video, to provide detailed work instructions for that work element. Most commonly, you'll be drilling down to one of these other 3 popular tools for documenting standard work. Let's look briefly at each of them. By far the most powerful and popular is the job instructions sheet, which provides a picture and a description for each sub-step of a detailed process. Notice that it too can have its own links to related documents if you need even further levels of detail. A single one-line work element on the standard work combination sheet might have pages of instructions, detailed enough to train a new hire or a vacation replacement to do that job while the primary worker goes on vacation without an unacceptable loss of productivity or quality, which is way too detailed for a typical standard work instruction sheet, which is designed to be taped up in front of each workstation as a reminder for already trained workers to not cut corners that might cause production inefficiencies, or worse yet, might cause quality problems.
If the people doing the actual work aren't doing it the way that your process improvement team envisioned, then your entire lean effort was wasted. ISO 9000 certification is a certification that you've thoroughly documented the way that you do things and that your workers are actually do things in the way that it was documented. That's what standard work is all about. Even if your company's not seeking official ISO 9000 certification, these standard work tools can still provide the same benefits because your people will be doing their work the standard way so that your customers and investors can trust that your processes are under control, and more importantly, so that you can trust that your processes are under control.
Now, the next popular tool for documenting standard work is the job breakdown sheet. As explained in our online training, the TWI training within industry methods provide a repeatable, teachable way to ensure that the trainee doesn't just nod their head and say, yeah, got it, but actually demonstrates to the trainer that they actually do know how to do the job correctly. And your Systems Twin templates even come with TWI pocket cards that you can easily personalize for your own internal Train the Trainer program. Now, the classic TWI teaching is that a job breakdown sheet should not be a controlled document, but we have customers using them as controlled documents. So we provide the templates, you figure out how to use them for your unique needs. Now, the last popular type of document for documenting standard work is the standard operating procedure. Now, this is a Word template, not Excel. In our online training, teaches you how to use advanced features of Word, such as the table of contents, how to insert pictures, and how to use those numbered outlines, so that your people learn how to use Word better. No matter which tool you're using to document your standard work, normally your data would be coming from a time observation worksheet, either this one, which is a Word document for highly repetitive processes, or this Excel observation sheet for less repetitive processes. Or your third option on the standard worksheet is to right-click Unhide these hidden columns for video time observation. Now, as explained in our cycle time video, process time and cycle time are normally all about the operator. They have nothing to do with machine time, unless you have a machine that might exceed takt time. That's the only time that you would pull out the machine balancing template. You would only pull out the re-engineering matrix for a really complicated process, and that's when you're most likely to also pull out the job design matrix. And because changing people's careers and jobs is an inherent part of process improvement, you might make it a habit to use the change management worksheet to see if you might be able to present your proposed changes a little more tactfully from their perspective.
So once your expensive team has taken all of that time to do all that valuable analysis, and you've posted the work instructions right there in front of your workers, and you've provided initial training to each worker, do you think that you're done? Do you think that you've accomplished your objective of locking in your gains and assuring that your people will actually do things the new, better way? Usually not. It's just human nature to ignore that piece of paper that's been pasted up there for weeks and to forget the subtle details of that training that seemed so clear 6 weeks ago but now seems a little foggy. And it's so easy to slide back into old habit patterns that were so comfortable for so long.
That's why we provide an entire suite of templates for auditing standard work, to supervise your supervisors, to make sure that they are supervising, to make sure that people are doing things the way that everyone agreed was the best way to do them. Now, if someone comes up with an idea to do things better, that's great. Let's incorporate that into standard work so that everyone does it that way. But each worker is not free to go off and do things their own renegade way that might have hidden problems. Once your senior managers have gotten into the habit of using standard work audit tools, then, and only then, have you completed one cycle of continuous improvement.
You can now rest assured that you can begin the next cycle of continuous improvement without falling into the common pit of coming back to begin round 2 of process improvement, only to find that all of your hard-earned gains have slid back into a mud hole of old habits.
You can finally start ratcheting your gains.